Fernando, first of all, congratulations on the world premiere, of course, and happy birthday. He turned 82 2 days ago. If I'm correct, this is your 8th feature-length film about contemporary Argentina, and you started this journey, I think, 16, 17 years ago. Can you take us back a little bit and talk about the start of that journey and how that cycle of films now concludes with this one?
En realidad, es el 8º film de la serie de películas que comencé con la crisis del 2001-2002 en la Argentina. Porque antes había hecho La Hora de los Hornos, documental y otros.
Well, in actual fact, it is the 8th film in a series I started with the Argentine crisis of 2001-2002, because before that I had made other films. I started with The Hour of the Furnaces and other documentary films.
Before we dive into the content of the film and go deep into this film in particular, Victoria, you produced the movie, and of course Fernando is a well-known documentary filmmaker, but I imagine producing such a film, which is at its core critical of the Argentinian establishment, must be quite difficult. Can you talk a little bit about how you financed this film and whether it's whether you have any difficulties in terms of release of the film in Argentina itself?
La película todavía no se estrenó en la Argentina. Fue mayormente producida por nosotros mismos, en el sentido de que Fernando, mi padre, se dedicó a filmar durante muchos años, a hacer esta investigación con un equipo muy reducido, él y un camarógrafo. Entonces fueron muchos años de filmar esto y tener como un material de archivo. Después tuvimos el apoyo del Instituto de Cine, que nos financió otra parte. Y bueno, es una producción muy pequeña y hecha muy a pulmón. Y todavía no se estrenó, así que bueno, vamos a ver cómo sigue.
Well, the film hasn't had a premiere yet in Argentina, and it was produced mainly by us, by my father and myself. He started working in the past 3 years together in a very small team. It was basically him and another person with camera working, and they started accumulating material over a series of years, and then we received a certain amount of financial support from the Film Institute, and they financed a part of it, but it's basically a very small production made with a lot of hard work.
Fernando, at the very beginning of the film we see you and we hear your voice, and you took the decision to be in front of the camera to lead the audience through that film. Can you talk a little bit about that decision, why you wanted to be in front of the camera rather than staying in the background?
Quizás es la búsqueda de la mayor sinceridad y el mayor compromiso. Esta serie de películas nació en la necesidad de mostrar, de revelar lo que no se quiere ver, lo que se sabe que existe, pero es mejor olvidarlo. El poder que tienen las imágenes es muy distinto a la información o la investigación escrita. Este film no agrega muchas cosas a lo que ya se sabe y no agrega a todos los informes y libros de grandes investigadores que han precedido este film. Lo que aporta es la mirada de la cámara y la verdad de los personajes que testimonian.
Well, maybe that has to do with the search for greater sincerity and commitment. This series of movies, it was born from the need to show what people don't want to see, what we know that exists, but we try to forget. And the power of images is different from written research. This movie, these series of movies do not add to anything that we didn't already know. They only take that written research and those books that were written by great researchers, and they contribute the perspective of the camera that shows the truth in a different way through the eyes of these witnesses.
There's a scene in the movie which I feel you brush over a little bit, where one of the protagonists says that all the professors that promoted that new agricultural model where Argentina was dependent on soy were left-wingers. How come the left, apparently in Argentina, promoted this model? Were they co-opted by multinational corporations?
Obviamente, la investigación de esta película daba para hacer 3 o 4 películas. Pero nuestra fuerza apenas llegó para hacer una película de menos de 100 minutos. Yo he realizado películas tan importantes o más trascendentes que estas, documentales, pero que fue imposible difundirlas. Por ejemplo, Oro Negro o la película sobre la crisis y desaparición del ferrocarril en la Argentina. Películas que eran de 2 horas, 2 horas 10. Entonces, no todo. Eso es lo lamentable del cine, que es un arte temporal y que tiene un cierto límite de tiempo. Ahora, la colonización en la Argentina tocó tanto a las culturas liberales de centro y centro derecha como a las culturas de izquierda. Ambas fueron dependientes de los modelos universitarios, de los modelos científicos, de las academias y de las modas anglosajonas y europeas. Todos siguen. Las universidades en la Argentina están profundamente colonizadas. La carrera del científico depende de cuántos papers le publican afuera. Tienen puntajes esos papers. No se es un científico pleno, entre comillas, si no se viaja a la metrópolis cultural. En fin, muchas razones, pero la colonización de los intelectuales en general de la izquierda ha sido muy grande. Y en determinado momento la moda, la modernidad, la vanguardia científica, en alguna época fue la Revolución Verde. Y hace 20 años, la revolución, entre comillas, de los transgénicos. Entonces, vinieron con esas modas y esa vanguardia en la Argentina.
Well, it's obvious when, for example, in a movie like this, that I have made movies that were more important than this, 3 or 4 movies, and they were maybe longer than this movie, maybe 100 minutes. Well, this movie is only is shorter than 100 minutes. And I have made films that are more important, that are stronger, but that have been very hard to distribute. For example, the movie Oro Negro, Black Gold, or the documentary I made about the train system in Argentina. But they were movies that were longer than 2 hours and 10 minutes, for example. And so, of course, with a film like this, you have certain temporal limits and you can only show a certain amount. But if we want to talk about the colonization of Argentinian politics, of the Argentinian mind, then we could say that the liberal politics in Argentina, both in the center, both on the left, have been infiltrated, have been dependent on this idea of science, that comes from the universities, that comes from academia, where what reigns is the Anglo-Saxon model, the European model. That is the fashion. The universities in Argentina have been colonized for a very long time. If you are a scientist and your career is entirely dependent on the amount of papers that you publish, you have a certain amount of points for the papers you publish. And you can't be successful if you don't go and work, for example, in this cultural metropolis. But this intellectual colonization of Argentina has deeply affected the left wing. And as we see, a while ago, we had this green revolution in modernity, but then 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we had the transgenic revolution. And this is the reigning fashion nowadays on both sides.
Quisiera agregar que, por supuesto, no todo es así. La mayor parte es así. Por supuesto que hay una Argentina intelectualmente también descolonizada. Por supuesto. Yo formo parte de esa Argentina. Y los que están en el film forman parte de esa Argentina. Pero ese es uno de los grandes problemas que nosotros tenemos. Y especialmente porque las usinas de formación, las universidades, y en general están tomadas por el sistema. La colonización es tremenda. Argentina es un país neocolonizado.
Of course, this is not everybody in the country. There is also an intellectual sector of the country that is not colonized. And of course, I belong to that, and the people who appear in this film belong to that area of Argentina that has not been colonized in this way. This is just one of the problems, because the universities, they are part of the system that is completely colonized. Argentina has been completely neo-colonized.
I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but you're a senator as well, and you preside over the Senate's Sustainable Environment Commission. Now, you're obviously sort of an activist for the green movement, but it seems as if in Argentina the green movement hasn't been able to gain as much momentum as it has in, for example, Germany, where the Green Party yields proper political influence. What are the reasons for that?
Si lo supiera.
I knew.
No, pero efectivamente hay un fuerte movimiento verde y asambleario. Tan fuerte que fue capaz de hacerle destruir a Monsanto la más grande fábrica de transgénicos que construía en América Latina. Ahí está esa secuencia. En el municipio de Malvinas Argentinas, en la provincia de Córdoba. No, muy fuerte, 3 años de luchas, cientos de movilizaciones y de acciones, y esa causa la acompañó buena parte del país.
However, it is true that there is a very strong movement, a very strong green and grassroots movement, and that is how it was possible for the movement to stop the building of the biggest factory in Latin America by Monsanto. And they were able to lead to its destruction in Córdoba, in Las Malvinas Argentinas province. And so, of course, that was the result of a struggle of over 3 years and over hundreds of protests, but they were able to achieve this, and that is what we showed.
También las asambleas lograron, las asambleas de vecinos, las movilizaciones de los vecinos, en lugares muy lejanos de los centros metropolitanos, se manifestaron contra la minería a cielo abierto con cianuro y sustancias químicas. Esas movilizaciones lograron que 8 provincias argentinas prohibieran la minería a cielo abierto con cianuro y sustancias químicas. Pero estamos en otra ola en la Argentina y en América Latina. Hoy gobierna la Argentina un grupo que cree que debería tirar abajo y modificar toda esa legislación porque quiere promover la minería a cielo abierto, como quiere promover todo esto que critica el film, lo promueve y lo silencia. Entonces estamos en un momento difícil en Argentina.
And these movements of neighbors, grassroots movements with their protests, assemblies, in places that were very far away from the centers of power in the country, they were also able, protesting the use of open mining with cyanide and other chemicals, this led to 8 Argentinian provinces prohibiting this type of open cast mining with cyanide and other chemicals. But of course now we are going through another political phase in Latin America and Argentina. The people who are in power, they believe that they should destroy this type of legislation to allow once again open cast mining with these type of chemicals. They are the people who promote this model that we are protesting against in the movie. They are the ones who try to silence what we're trying to say. And of course, this means it is a very difficult period for Argentina.
Ja, meine Damen und Herren, ladies and gentlemen, we'll open up questions for the audience. We have 2 microphones in the audience. Sie können gerne auf Deutsch oder Englisch fragen, das ist überhaupt kein Problem. And we'll have a first one here in the middle on the left.
Primero, muchas gracias por la película. Mi pregunta va a la conexión, el argumento de la película. Estoy aquí. El argumento de la película está conectando las comunidades indígenas afectadas por el derrumbe de su territorio con las agriculturas ecológicas. A mí por el argumento, ¿no? Por el sistema y todo eso. Pero eso, a mí, por la película, parece como una construcción de la película. A mí me gustaría saber si hay vínculos reales entre los activistas ecologistas de agricultura ecológica y los pueblos originarios. O si son 2 mundos distintos que hacen sus luchas distintas.
First of all, thank you for your film. One thing, though, that I saw, if you see the narrative of the movie, is that it seems to connect the indigenous communities with the destruction of their territories, and on the other hand, ecological agriculture. So, taken from the film, it seems to be that there is a connection between ecological agriculture and these communities, but in my opinion, this seems to be a construction. Are there any real ties between ecological agriculture and the indigenous peoples, or are they completely different worlds?
Sí, efectivamente, los pueblos indígenas o comunidades originarias son, en toda América Latina, los principales guardianes de la madre tierra, quienes cuidan el bosque porque viven en el bosque y se alimentan de los frutos del bosque. Esta película, por supuesto, pone mucho el acento en los desmontes. Empieza la película con un desmonte y prácticamente termina con el desmonte, porque a pesar de la ley de protección del bosque nativo, votada ya hace más de 10 años como ley, se siguió derrumbando, volteando el bosque, expandiendo la frontera agrícola, es decir, la búsqueda de rentabilidad de los grupos financieros que invierten en los cultivos transgénicos. Eso ha aumentado sin ningún control, tanto, y por eso está al final, que cientos de pueblos de la pampa húmeda, de las regiones agrícolas más importantes que jamás se habían inundado, se inundaron en estos últimos 2-3 años, porque ya no hay bosque que retenga las lluvias. Se produce el cambio climático, aumentan las precipitaciones, pero no hay quien las retenga. Por eso esta película pone especial hincapié en cómo se extiende la frontera sojera destruyendo lo que le queda a la Argentina de bosque nativo, etcétera, que es es por la soja, pero también genera una catástrofe ambiental. Bueno.
Well, yes, indigenous peoples, or the first peoples, as we'd also say in Latin America, are the principal guardians of Mother Earth. They are the ones who take care of the forest because they are the ones who live in the forest and eat the fruits of the forest. And this film, as we saw, it starts with deforestation and ends with deforestation. Those are practically the beginning and the final scenes of the movie. Shows that despite the fact that there is a law to protect the native forests for the past 10 that was enacted over 10 years ago, forests have continued to be destroyed because of people seeking profits, the profits of these investment groups that invest in transgenic crops. And this has been increasing with absolutely no control, so much that those over these hundreds of peoples who live in this region called the Pampa Húmeda, which is one of the most important agricultural regions in the country, have been continuously flooded in recent times, where previously they had never been subject to floods. Why? Because there are no forests to stop the rain. The increased rain because of climate change, and now there are no forests to stop this increased water and cause floods. So this film shows that this desire to expand the territories where soya is being grown is leading to a complete destruction of the native forests, which is an absolute catastrophe.
Yo agregaría el dato que la mayor cantidad de explotaciones agrarias son pequeñas chacras de 2, 3, 5 hectáreas y que están en manos de poblaciones originarias o descendientes de primera generación, criollos mezclados con los originarios. Son enormes, creo que seguramente habrá más de 150.000 o 180.000 pequeñas explotaciones, que es agricultura artesanal, es agricultura orgánica. Los venenos o los elementos que se utilizan para combatir malezas e insectos son orgánicos, son naturales. Todas esas prácticas y esas ideas están en la vieja agricultura originaria.
I would like to add one fact, and that is that the largest amount of agricultural terrain is in the hands of small landowners or small and medium-sized farmers with 2, 3 to 5 hectares. And these lands are in the hands of people who are either of mixed descendancy or who do belong to indigenous peoples. And we're talking about 150,000 of these small-scale farms that are organic, where they don't use poisons instead to combat the weeds and insects. They use absolutely natural products, and they use traditional ideas for their agriculture.
There's a question here on the right in the front.
Thank you very much for your film. I have a question about the fact that you are today in Europe, and you can do a lot in Argentina to change things. The political landscape is not the best right now, you told us that. My question as a European here, what can we do here to change or to have an effect to help this change over there in Argentina, especially since you say that Argentina is neo-colonized by us, maybe.
Por ejemplo, en la Argentina seguimos con muchísima atención el debate que se ha desarrollado el año pasado y hace pocos meses en la Comunidad Europea sobre el glifosato. Por supuesto, si Europa o los principales países agrícolas de Europa reconoce los efectos del glifosato y lo prohíbe, eso va a tener una consecuencia extraordinaria sobre la utilización allá. Ahora, efectivamente, lo que mueve todo esto es la búsqueda de renta y los grandes intereses económicos, porque Quien produce lo que le importa es salir de deudas o ganar el mayor dinero posible, porque antes lo perdió y ahora lo quiere ganar. Y si tiene que tirar ese bosque, lo tira. Y si tiene que colocar, por ejemplo, en la Argentina se usa el glifosato, es el mal menor. Acá mencionan el endosulfán. Esos dos chicos que murieron en Goya, murieron por jugar en un barro con vertientes o desechos de agua con endosulfán alfa. Bastó que pisaran y jugaran para que por ósmosis entrara el veneno y a la noche tenían una hepatitis fulminante y murieron al día siguiente. Entonces se utilizan DDT, que está prohibido, el endosulfán está prohibido por la Convención de Estocolmo y se usa. Como no hay controles, como bien marca la película, que no se controla en los lugares de producción y en los lugares de venta es imposible ya controlarlo. Entonces, los ejemplos que vienen de afuera, donde están los modelos, son importantísimos. Y por supuesto, da escalofrío al que ha luchado contra Monsanto que la vayan a comprar Monsanto. ¿Me entienden?
Well, for example, in Argentina, we've been very, very carefully following the debate last year and in recent months regarding glyphosate. And for example, if Europe and the main agricultural countries in Europe were to ban glyphosate, then this would have a tremendous effect on what's happening in Argentina. But of course, what is the motor driving all of this? It is the quest for profits, it is the quest for money. If you have somebody who is producing agricultural products, then of course what they want to do is to eliminate their debts. They want to earn as much money as possible. And if they have to destroy a forest to increase their profits, then they're going to do that. Now, I have to say that glyphosate is almost the lesser of various evils. We have, for example, endosulfane. And as we saw in the film, these two children who died in Goya, they died because they were playing in the mud. They were playing in the mud when there was endosulfane alpha from a plant, from a tomato plant upriver. And because of the osmotic effect, that night they suffered from their liver failure and they died the next day. And so these are products, DDT, endosulfane, they are banned by the Stockholm Convention, but they're still used because absolutely nobody controls what's going on, as we saw in the film. They don't control at the point of production, and of course it's impossible to control at the point of sale. And so, if we have a different example from Europe, then of course this is the model that we tend to follow. And on the other hand, it's terrifying to see, after we have been fighting against Monsanto, to see that now Bayer has bought Monsanto.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Right here in the front row.
Buenas tardes. Gracias, no solo por el film, sino por el compromiso político. Y mi pregunta es que hay muchos movimientos, pero son muy pequeños, que ofrecen respuestas superadoras, que se rebelan contra este modelo. Si bien la matriz mediática, económica, política es muy compleja y es muy difícil de romper, ¿cuál piensa usted que puede ser una verdadera alternativa superadora de ese gran mal que vive la Argentina?
First of all, thank you for your film, and not only for your film, but also for your political commitment. Now, my question is, of course, there are many movements, but there are also very small movements, the ones that are trying to rebel against the system. And of course, we know that the political, the media, the financial system are extremely strong, and it's very hard to break with this structure. So what are, in your opinion, any true alternatives to change what is happening in Argentina right now, for example?
Bueno, lamentablemente desarrollar bien la respuesta nos llevaría un buen tiempo. Yo he pasado los últimos 20 o 30 años empleando mucho tiempo personal en tratar de aportar a la construcción de una nueva oposición, una oposición capaz de disputar el poder, de ser gobierno. Por supuesto que he fracasado. Eso es lo que me llevó a mí, en el momento más importante de mi profesión cinematográfica, a dar un paso al costado y hacer una contribución, aprovechar el prestigio que tenía para hacer una contribución a la construcción política interna. Por supuesto, una fuerza renovadora, una fuerza democrática, popular, y las fuerzas renovadoras son fuerzas de izquierda, pero no lo logramos. Todavía hoy le falta a la Argentina construir la unidad de ese frente y de ese movimiento, porque está toda dividida en pequeños partidos. Y además, la población sufre el engaño de que la lucha es entre blanco y negro. Pero blanco y negro es Frankenstein y Drácula. Entonces, es lo que se llama la grieta, esa división de los argentinos entre los que fueron gobierno hasta hace poco y los que gobiernan hoy. Los dos en la cúpula, son funcionales el uno al otro. Por eso, de más en más, las grandes mayorías comienzan a ver el engaño por los incumplimientos del gobierno actual, por su política de liquidar derechos y conquistas sociales, etcétera, etcétera, y por la entrega del país y sus recursos. Pero yo creo que de a poco se irán dando las condiciones para conformar un frente que una a todas esas parcialidades. En las democracias actuales se terminan los procesos electorales en general en una lucha de dos. En la Argentina existen las primarias y la elección definitiva. Hay que pasar las primarias para llegar a la definitiva. Ya es un filtro grande. Y cuando se llega a la definitiva, si no se triunfa el primero por una diferencia de más de 10 puntos, hay lo que se llama el segundo turno de la definitiva. Y ahí todo el país vota a uno o a otro. Vota el mal menor, algunos votan en blanco, pero el voto en blanco, la abstención, fortalece al que tiene más poder de los dos o al que piensa ganar, así que no es una solución. Pero en fin, es un proceso que va a llevar su tiempo.
Well, unfortunately, if I tried to really answer your question, it would take too long. I don't think we have enough time for that. But the truth is that for the past 20 and 30 years, I have been dedicating a great deal of my personal time to try to contribute to a change and to build a new opposition that would be capable of vying for real political power in the country. Of course, I have failed in that, and that led me to one of the most important points in my career, and that was to step aside and to use my prestige and my career to try to build a new political alternative based on democracy, based on renewing the system, based on a popular approach, and which is, of course, a left-wing approach because of these features. And now the truth is, we failed again, and Argentina is still not united. We have a huge amount of small parties, and they're all vying for power among themselves. But I think that the population of the country has been lied to because they've been led to believe that there is a white versus black struggle, a Frankenstein versus Dracula struggle, in Argentina. And we see that both the previous government and the current government, the ones who were really at the top of power, they both, in the end, they help each other out, they work together. And so I think the population has started to see the lies of the current government, for example, because they have failed to fulfill their promises, their social promises with programs, and because we see that they are giving away the resources of our country. And I think that slowly we will reach the conditions where we can all unite, where we can unite the different smaller groups and to create right now a democratic alternative. But we know as well that the political situation in Argentina is thus that with elections there are always two sides. First, before the general elections in Argentina, we have primaries. And so these primaries are a very important filter. And then we have two candidates who are participating in the definite elections. And then if one candidate doesn't obtain at least 10 points more than the other candidate, there will be a second round. And then the whole country will vote for either one or the other of these evils. One is probably the lesser of the two evils. And some people, of course, they use blank votes, but that does not help because it only helps to strengthen the strongest political candidate. And so I think it is something that takes a great deal of time to build this.
Sí, a mí me gustaría, antes de terminar, hay un problema que lo plantea al final de esta película y que es tremendo como lo está sufriendo el hemisferio sur, que es el cambio climático. El cambio climático en los países en vías de desarrollo o países pobres no hay defensas para las catástrofes, ni hay previsión de las catástrofes. El cambio climático o el calentamiento global es producto de la emisión de los gases de efecto invernadero que produce el modelo industrial capitalista con quemando energías fósiles, combustibles sobre todo, petróleo, todo esto, bueno, carbón. Ese es un problema grande. América Latina y también Argentina tiene bosques y la región del Mato Grosso, el norte de Argentina y el Amazonas es la mayor fábrica de oxígeno del planeta y no recibe ninguna compensación del resto del planeta por lo que aporta naturalmente. El calentamiento global es producido en un casi 70 o 75%, Estados Unidos y China el 47-48% de la emisión de gases invernaderos. La Comunidad Europea y Rusia le agregan otro 20%, y con Japón está en el 70-75%. El calentamiento global produce catástrofes que las pagan los países pobres en vías de desarrollo. Yo digo todo esto porque he participado en las últimas cumbres climáticas. París 2015, y el año pasado estuve en noviembre en Bonn, la cumbre climática, la COP23. Participé en el Tribunal por la Defensa de los Derechos de la Naturaleza. Bueno, y escuché denuncias de diputados aquí alemanes, de la izquierda o verdes, que me asombraron. El compromiso, si bien Alemania ha tomado compromisos grandes en la disminución, en el compromiso de no producir más autos a combustión en la década del 20, no sé si es en 2025 o 2030, ha tomado una serie de medidas industriales porque los cambios industriales son lentos, no se puede hacer así y cambiar de un lado para el otro. Son miles de empleos, todo proceso muy complejo. Pero estuve sorprendido por las denuncias de los legisladores que denunciaba que Alemania era el país de Europa que tenía más fábricas, más minas, de carbón a cielo abierto. Y a 20 o 30 kilómetros de Bonn estaba la mina de carbón a cielo abierto más grande de Europa. Y nada contamina más que la explotación de las minas de carbón.
And before we finish, I'd like to say one thing. One problem that we see at the end of the movie is how the global south is suffering from climate change. And these countries that are supposedly called countries, developing countries, or the poorest nations of the earth, they have no defense against these catastrophes. They have no way to predict these catastrophes caused by climate change or global warming, which, as we know, is caused by greenhouse gases produced through the capitalist industrial model, where we take, of course, fossil fuels, oil, and carbon, and these are burned ultimately and used for the economic model. And in Latin America, in Argentina, we have forests, for example, in Mata Grosso, or of course the whole Amazon basin, that are the most important oxygen lung of the planet. But of course, these countries receive no type of compensation for this natural contribution to the world. And so we see that 75% approximately of the greenhouse gases are emitted by the global north, by USA and China with 48%, by Europe and Russia with 20%, and then with Japan we reach this 75% of global warming causing greenhouse gases. And so of course this catastrophe of global warming takes its toll on the poorer countries of the global south. I myself was present at the latest climate summits, for example in Paris in 2015, and last year I was in Bonn at the COP23, and for example I was present at the Tribunal for the Defense of Natural Rights, and I heard representatives of German politics, members of the German parliament, from the Green Party and other parties, I was surprised by their complaints or by how they denounced the situation in Germany. Because although Germany has committed to, for example, not producing any more fossil fuel cars up until 2025 or 2020, I'm not exactly sure, they say that the change has been very slow because you can't do it fast and because you have to be careful with thousands of jobs. But I was surprised how these German members of parliament and representatives were telling me that Germany is the country in Europe with the highest amount of open cast coal mines. And 20-30 kilometers away from where we were, there was the largest open cast coal mine in Germany. And so, as we know, of course, there is nothing that pollutes more than this type of open cast coal or lignite mining.
And I think we can all already hear the next film coming, and we're very excited for that one. But for now, thank you very much.